This House is now in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 22nd October 2019 to be confirmed. The questions that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are so confirmed. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, October 29th, 2019 to be deferred.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that those minutes be deferred.
The questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are so deferred.
Announcements by Your Honor the Speaker. Messages, Excellency the Governor General. Petitions, papers.
No, hold on. There's the duties, right? Pedro? The duties, right? Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the duties, taxes, and other payments exemption companies order 2019.
Government notices.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the resolution to grant the sum of $481,855 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2019-2020.
Private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Pedro, the replacement of the notice from Dale, when does that come? Okay, cool. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43 and 44 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
The questions that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The aforementioned standing orders are so suspended.
Speaker, I beg to draw order number 5.
Yeah. You can indicate.
Mr. Speaker, I want to indicate that that order is being replaced by the resolution of which the leader of government business has just given notice.
Questions that the aforementioned order be withdrawn. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. The aforementioned order is withdrawn.
It hasn't come to you, right? So I can just email it. But let's try it again. No,
Public business, sir.
Government business is now the order of the day.
Order number 9, in the name of the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness, to move the passing of a resolution to adopt the report of the Joint Select Committee on the Medicinal Cannabis Industry Bill 2019.
Honourable Member for City of Bridgetown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The debate on the Medicinal Cannabis Bill 2019 would have started in this honourable chamber on the 30th of August 2019 when a resolution was introduced in the Honourable the House of Assembly, and then that resolution received the concurrence of the Honourable the Senate on Wednesday 4th of September 2019 for the constitution of a joint select committee to debate and report on the bill. The composition of the joint select committee was 8 members from the Honourable the House of Assembly and 4 members from the Honourable the Senate. And at the first meeting of the Joint Select Committee, the Honourable Member for St. Philip South, and Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, was elected as the chairman of that Joint Select Committee, and I was elected as the deputy chair. But before going into the deliberations of the Joint Select Committee, I think it is important to just highlight, to guide the debate today, the fact that the bill, the Medicinal Cannabis Bill 2019, had certain and specific objectives, which include the regulation of the handling of medicinal cannabis in Barbados, the establishment of a Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority, a Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Board, and a Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Appeals Tribunal. Also, the issuing of licenses for the handling of medicinal cannabis and related matters. And those objects would have guided the Joint Select Committee in terms of the terms of reference that were established, and I will refer to those terms of reference, which included to inquire into and determine whether the bill as drafted fulfills the express objects of the promotion, regulation, and handling of, i.e. cultivation, processing, importation, exportation, transit, transshipment, manufacture, sale, possession, and distribution of medicinal cannabis in Barbados. 2, to examine and analyze whether the provisions of the bill which relate to the establishment of the Medicinal Cannabis Authority engender the development of policies, procedures, and guidelines of the medicinal cannabis industry, ensuring the availability of medicinal cannabis to patients in a safe and effective manner. 3, to examine whether the bill as drafted facilitates ongoing scientific research in medicinal cannabis with the resultant development of the medicinal cannabis industry. 4, to consider whether the bill as drafted offers an effective enforcement procedure to ensure compliance with the provisions of the bill. 5, to make recommended changes, if deemed necessary, to the bill as drafted for further consideration by the Chief Parliamentary Council. Now, we were able to have 5 meetings of the Joint Select Committee, and a wide cross-section of Barbadians and organizations, particularly stakeholders, participated fully in the deliberations and discussions of the Joint Select Committee. And I would like to publicly express the sincerest thanks of the chairman of the Joint Select Committee and all of the members, to all those organizations and all those individuals who would have participated and contributed significantly to the discussions and ultimately to the enhancement of the cannabis amendment, the Medicinal Cannabis Bill 2019, I'm sorry. And also I would like to thank all those Barbadians who attended the proceedings, who might not necessarily have participated, but the proceedings attracted a number of persons each time we met, and persons remained throughout the proceedings, which is, for me, was an indication that the level of interest in the country is indeed high. So we sought to include and to embrace as many groups and persons as we possibly could, given the time that we were given. And the committee would have received submissions by way of oral presentations and written submissions from a number of organizations, including the Barbados Pharmaceutical Society, the Barbados Pharmacy Council, the Barbados Medical Council, the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners. We got from pharmacologists, from academia, from the church, the Pentecostal Assemblies of the West Indies, members of the Islamic community, the Barbados Christian Council, the members of the African Heritage Foundation, the Council for the Advancement of Rastafari, ICAR, the Bar Association, Banking Association, Council for the Disabled, and others. And in addition to that, we also extended the collaboration to the wider public by way of the Government Information Service live stream on YouTube, The Nation, and others. So it was wide and varied and on Parliament's website. And there were a number of comments coming back from ordinary Barbadians which informed the committee as to the way it ought to proceed. And really and truly, as I said before, that represented democracy for me in its truest form, where we engaged the public, recognizing that not all of the solutions, not all of the knowledge, not all of the ideas resided within the confines of this particular chamber, and that Barbadians had a say and a stake in what we were doing. But it started with the objects of the bill and also the terms of reference of the Joint Select Committee, in order to state up front that we were restricted or confined to those terms of reference and what it is that this particular bill was seeking to achieve, so that there were discussions on other areas that were beyond the confines of the bill. And we listened attentively, because those persons who made those submissions articulated well. And for me personally, I learned a lot, some things that I did not know myself, and so we are still grateful for those discussions. And I would like to say to those persons and those groups that those discussions will continue, and that we, based on the mandate given, that we then listen and we took account of those matters that affected this particular bill. I would like to just go through some of the things that were discussed by the various groups. I'm not going to discuss everything, of course. The report is here, but I think it is important to highlight some of the issues raised. First of all, to give the assurance to those persons and those organizations that we took what they said seriously, and that we appreciate sincerely the discussions that were held, and to assure them, I think they will recognize by the end of my presentation and by the end of the debate, that there are matters that were raised by some of them that we have actually taken on board. And like I said earlier, those things have certainly served to enhance the quality of the bill. Let me start firstly with the African Heritage Foundation. I believe they were the first to present. This group felt that the word indigenous should be added to the bill, and that this spoke as well to the empowerment and enfranchisement of communities and to the masses. They felt that the penalties that were cited in the bill were a bit draconian, and that persons with cannabis convictions were excluded from playing a role in the new medicinal cannabis industry. And we took those points on board, and I will speak to one or two of them later. The Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners questioned the interpretation of medicinal cannabis, and they asked the question whether or not medicinal cannabis was separate and distinct from the synthetic preparations for clinical use. The role of the Ministry of Agriculture and food security versus the role of the Ministry of Health and Wellness was also raised, and I will speak to that. BAM indicated that the members of the medical profession were presently confined to prescribing approved drugs that are proven to be efficacious and safe. And that is a matter that I will also address. The Bar Association looked at the definition of patient as indicated in the bill. They felt it was limited and needed further discussion, and the access to medicinal cannabis by young people needed further consideration, and that the bill, as it was at that time, did not provide alternative methods of access. They called for a clear regulatory framework and felt that the absence of regulations supporting the bill was an error. That is, as far as the Barbados Bar Association is concerned. An interesting contribution came from a notable pharmacologist who was supported by one or two members of the committee, as well as one or two other persons who presented it to the committee. And this had to do with the discomfort by doctors in writing prescriptions in relation to new drugs, and especially having to make recommendations, which was a bit of a gray area for them. He indicated that recommendations are used in a situation where it is difficult to give a precise dosage. Example, the use of tinctures, oils, and balms. And basically, that the legislation should be disease-specific or indication-specific. This general thing had some support from others. Concern was expressed by some members of the committee about the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Agriculture in relation to the bill. That, as I said, also was expressed by some other groups. We had a presentation by a former biomedical scientist with Merck, who indicated that Barbados should be looking to do clinical studies understanding marijuana and its importance on certain diseases, its dosage, side effects, and safety profile. So this one was more in the area of research, and that also will be spoken to. One pharmacist had an issue with persons visiting Barbados with prescriptions that were written by physicians outside of our jurisdictions, and that such prescriptions would not and could not be filled by pharmacists here because those persons would not have been registered in Barbados. And that is something that the committee also looked at. And we speak to that because an amendment was also recommended to be made. And the access by the Ministry and the Minister of Agriculture to patient information was questioned, and this generated a lot of discussion, and I will speak to that later on, but that was a significant point that was raised during the discussions. ICAR had a problem with the title of the bill. They felt that it was a misnomer, indicating that there was no such thing as medicinal cannabis or non-medicinal cannabis, since cannabis is in itself medicinal and has been so since 500 years before Christ. That was the argument put forward, and that the bill itself must be anchored in the concept of reparatory justice as far as the members of the Rastafarian community is concerned. The Barbados Pharmaceutical Council also presented, and they believe that there's a place for medicinal cannabis in the treatment of specific medical conditions in Barbados, and they welcome the addition of medicinal cannabis compounds to the National Drug Formulary, an action that was taken by the Ministry of Health and Wellness through the Drug Formulary Committee, which is within the purview of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. But they suggested that all matters pertaining to medicines, prescribing, dispensing, etc., ought to be governed by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and all matters pertaining to the cultivation, harvesting, and preparation of raw materials, research and development should be with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, I'm sorry. And I'll just speak to that a little, because I think it is important to bring some clarity to this issue. When the first draft of this bill was circulated, I would have to admit that the Ministry of Health and Wellness, including the Minister of Health and Wellness, had some issues with some aspects of the bill. And those aspects of the bill, in my judgment, lacked clarity. There was some ambiguity. And I think that that was also echoed by some persons and some organizations that presented. But what we did before the bill, actually the draft, before the bill came to the House of Assembly, is that I saw an audience with the drafters of the bill. And we spent hours, from the Chief Parliamentary Council as well as the Ministry of Health and Wellness, in order to clarify what for us was a sticky situation. And I'm happy to report that as a result of those deliberations, and also as a result of some of the contributions that were made during the Joint Select Committee meetings, that we are at a stage now where I think it is quite clear exactly what the roles are between the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security and the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And so that the position that was articulated by the Pharmaceutical Society is one that we embrace, and is one that the bill and the regulations ensure. So there's no difficulty there whatsoever going forward. The Pharmaceutical Society also had issues with the dispensing of medicinal cannabis, articulating that only pharmacists, which included for them graduate pharmacists, were the persons that could do so, could dispense. So that where we had the authorization, we had to discuss those issues as a result of that point that was raised, and that too will be spoken to later. One individual, a lawyer, argued that as far as palliative care is concerned, that medicinal cannabis works best at the end stage than any other drug. And he also suggested that hemp be introduced into the bill, since as far as the Food and Drug Administration of the United States is concerned, that they had separated marijuana from hemp. And if we included that in the bill, that it would then lead to the creation of two industries running parallel. And that was also a matter that was discussed by the Joint Select Committee. In a written submission by the Pentecostal Assemblies of the West Indies, they had issues with dispensing or therapeutic facilities, and also the word prescribe or recommended, as I spoke to earlier, which is the same problem that the pharmacologists had with the word recommend. And PAWI also asserted that the bill was simply a guise to introduce the recreational use of marijuana. And I will speak to that a little later, because it is quite clear, as articulated in this manifesto, which was presented to the people of Barbados prior to voting day, election day, that this is what a new Barbados Labour Party government would do: introduce or legalize medicinal marijuana. And I will explain why it was important for us to do so, and why the Ministry of Health and Wellness took the initial step to add some of the medicinal cannabis compounds onto the drug formulary, thus making it legal for Barbadians and visitors to be able to access those compounds. The Council for the Disabled supported the bill and its passage, which they deem has the potential to improve the quality of life for all Barbadians. But they also question the situation regarding caregivers as it relates to persons with disabilities and the prohibitive cost of members of that community to access treatment for a range of illnesses. The Bankers Association recommended that the committee factored into its consideration of the bill the inability of persons engaged in the medicinal cannabis industry to access banking services and the potential hindrance to the development of the industry in Barbados. And they were looking at the fact that this could jeopardize correspondent bank relationships that they have. And this is an issue that is not only peculiar to Barbados, but in all countries and in all areas where medicinal cannabis has been legalized, including the United States of America. There were some members of the medical fraternity that also recommended the addition of a nurse to the board, to the cannabis board, and I think that that was viewed favorably. The bill was also supported by the National Council of Substance Abuse, and they indicated a willingness to be considered in terms of promoting the use of medicinal cannabis and sensitizing and educating the people in Barbados. So that you would see from that we had deliberations that were far and wide. And the truth is, there's no way at all that you're going to be able to please everyone, that you're going to be able to please every community. And even on the committee itself, there were differences of opinions in relation to various aspects of the bill. But that's the nature of life. That's the nature of life. But how did we get to this point, though? That is something that I would like to speak to for a little bit. How did we reach this point? And I would say that we have reached this point, first of all, because we indicated in this manifesto that we were going to legalize medicinal cannabis. And while that may be seen as a promise kept, and this party has a reputation for keeping its promises, and that our performances are in concert with the promises made in our manifesto. But while that is important, I think it is even more important why we have done what we've done and why we are at this point. When I assume office as Minister of Health and Wellness, I can say to you without fear of contradiction that my office, and I know the office of the Prime Minister, have been inundated with requests, with emails, with letters, with calls from Barbadians and visitors who wanted the opportunity to use medicinal cannabis. That's a fact. And what was happening even before my time was that on a case-by-case basis, the Minister of Health and the Chief Medical Officer, as the law provides, facilitated persons, gave permission for persons to be able to access medicinal cannabis compounds. And it became pellucidly clear that the numbers were growing and that obviously some sort of action had to be taken. So that's one thing. But as with anything that is new, obviously you had to take your time. And we did not arrive at this point, as we would say in Beijing, in a jiffy. This was carefully thought out. And the first part of this was the responsibility of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And that was to look at the situation where perhaps we could include some medicinal cannabis compounds on the drug formulary in order then to make it accessible and legal for persons to be able to get these drugs. That took months. And why? Because the formulary committee had to look at it in a comprehensive manner. Cabinet also insisted, and we readily agreed, that there had to be a training component in relation to the dispensing, the prescribing and dispensing of medicinal cannabis to ensure that we get it right. That was something that was fundamental in the process. And so a comprehensive seminar was laid on by the Ministry of Health and Wellness in collaboration with the University of the West Indies. And I believe about 125 or 135 persons, ranging from pharmacists, medical practitioners, all those persons who would be associated with this medicinal cannabis initiative had to undergo that training and to be certified to be able to do so. And it was done by, the training was conducted by Barbadians, pharmacologists, persons from University of the West Indies, as well as an expert from Canada. And at the end of that process, we moved towards getting those drugs. Now, there were 5 classes or 5 compounds that were approved. And they were approved because drugs on the drug formulary in Barbados are there because of evidence. They're evidence-based. Decisions were evidence-based, based on evidence. And that is why those compounds which satisfy that requirement were placed on the drug formulary. The next step was the establishment of the industry. And that was placed under the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, and justifiably so. Why? Because the industry itself goes way beyond the responsibilities of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And so we've been collaborating in this regard. But like anything new, anything that is transformative, anything that is revolutionary, which this is, you will always have apprehension, there will be doubts and fears. That is a natural thing. I well recall, as a youngster, when it was first mooted that we will move away from having conductors on buses, and you'll have the driver alone and some mechanism of that's what it appeared to me at that time. I could not conceive of a bus without a conductor. You remember those days, Mr. Speaker? Even in the church, our grandparents would never ever entertain the idea of a guitar or a drum being played inside the church. It was almost sacrilegious. Why? Because that is how they were socialized. That is how they came up. And if it was not a pipe organ, it was not music. That is true. And so there's no difference with medicinal cannabis. And any new drug, I'm advised that which comes on the market, you always have these issues. So that when people criticize or offer suggestions, we should not, first of all, dismiss them, and we haven't. But neither should we be daunted by anything of that nature, because instead of feeling that we can't do this, I believe that by encompassing the collective wisdom of our people, that we have the capacity and we have the ability to be able to do some great things. And this is an area that we should embrace boldly, and I will explain why. The medicinal cannabis industry is the opening of a new economic frontier in this country. And we are at the stage where we have to move in some new directions with our economy if we want to be able to sustain the quality of life and the quality of social services that we offer in this country. And I urge all Barbadians not to be afraid. We are not the only ones doing this. Medicinal cannabis has been legalized in several countries across the globe, in Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Lesotho, in Europe, in South America, in Israel. And even though the United States, the federal government, has not legalized or approved because of federal law or the interpretation of federal law, I will say to you that 33 states and the District of Columbia within the United States have legalized medicinal cannabis. There are 2 million people in the United States approximately who depend on medicinal cannabis to improve their quality of life. And those 33 states and the District of Columbia, you're looking at about 60% of the population. We are behind the curve in terms of time. There are countries in the Caribbean that are ahead of us, Jamaica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to mention two. But being behind the curves gives us an advantage, in my view. That advantage being that we can learn from the mistakes made by others. So that although Israel would have been in the business of medicinal cannabis research now for about 50 years, and they were at the forefront of this new industry, this new initiative, to the extent that even the Americans and the Canadians and so on, they go to Israel because Israel is ahead of the game with research. But one of the mistakes that was made is that the industry was not regulated. This particular bill, with the amendments that the committee would have recommended, this provides a regulatory framework for the medicinal cannabis industry in Barbados. That is what it does. And I want to say to all Barbadians that within this 166 square miles, we have the brains. Yes. We have the brains, we have the intestinal fortitude, we have the capacity to be able not to sit on the periphery of this growing industry, to be consumers only of the pharmaceutical products, derivatives or compounds from marijuana, medicinal marijuana. But we have everything at our disposal to be a game changer, to be a leader. so that in collaboration with the University of the West Indies, for example, and all of the brain power that we have in this country, we are capable of conducting research in this industry, research that we can sell to the rest of the world. And it has always been the intention of the government of Barbados, this Barbados Labour Party government, not only to open this new economic frontier, but also to make it possible for ordinary Barbadians to be able to benefit in a significant way from any new industry that we have in this country. And so that, although during even the deliberations of the Joint Select Committee, one of the presenters had issues with the fact that 30% is what we said that each company coming into this country, any foreign company, had to have about 30% Barbadian ownership. But the bill and the government's intent is not to restrict Barbadians to simply 30%. If they are Barbadians with the economic means and the fortitude to invest in this new industry, there are Barbadians then who can own companies that would be 100% Barbadian. What the 30% guarantees is that even if people do not have the wherewithal, because it's an expensive undertaking, that the guarantee is there that at least 30% would be owned by people, residents, citizens of this country. And that is the way that we have determined that we will proceed with this new industry. But you know, we are a colony of the United Kingdom. Farmer. And our institutions were built on the United Kingdom model. So that in 2018, when the UK legalized medical marijuana, and I quote the then Home Secretary, who stated, and I quote, "Having been moved by heartbreaking cases involving sick children, it was important to me that we took swift action to help those who can benefit from medicinal cannabis," end of quote. The 14th Daily Alarmer stated that he was not in favor of recreational marijuana, but he was in favor of the exception, what he called the exception, that is using it for health reasons. And there are several international figures who not only support medicinal cannabis, but have personally benefited from the use of medicinal cannabis. And I'm giving that information to clearly indicate that this is not a matter that we have just jumped into. We are not the only ones who are going in this direction. And that more importantly, that we are going in the right direction, in my view, for the right reason. And that if there are persons who can benefit from medicinal marijuana, then we as a country should not deny our citizens the right to benefit from medicinal marijuana. But I'll say this. We must not doubt the ability and the ingenuity of our people. There's absolutely no way, certainly as Minister of Health and Wellness, and that is why I had those meetings with the drafters of the bill. There's no way that the Ministry of Health and Wellness will allow something to happen in this country that is not medicinally advantageous or medically advantageous to the people of Barbados. There's no way why people should think that the medicinal cannabis bill has to do with the fact that we, on this side, want to legalize recreational marijuana. When the Prime Minister and all of us on this side, throughout and during the campaign, during the last elections, indicated clearly that the legalization of recreational marijuana cannot be decided by 30 people in here, but will have to be determined by referendum. There is no way that Barbados, a country with a long legacy in terms of the security and safety of this country, and yeah, we get challenges from time to time like any other country. That's again human nature, and it's not the challenge that is the issue, is how we respond to the challenge. But we have a legacy of providing security and ensuring that our society remains safe. And so the security that is required for a medicinal cannabis industry is available right here in Barbados, because we have the people that can do it. We have the people that can manipulate the technology that will enhance the security regime. And I dare say that from my perspective, I have no doubt at all going forward that the right decisions will be made in this regard. And so I will come now to examine a few things in relation to some of the decisions that were made by the Joint Select Committee as a result of the contributions that were made by individuals and also by institutions and organizations. I come to clause 2(1). This is the interpretation section. The committee had issues with parts of this section. For example, the premises. It was felt by the committee and also by some of the presenters that the definition was too wide and should be tightened. And so that is reflected in the amended version of the bill dated the 3rd of October 2019. I'm happy to report that the word recommendation was removed from the bill. And it was removed from the bill for obvious reasons. The arguments against it coming from the medical and the pharmaceutical community was indeed strong. Let me come to therapeutic facility, because this generated a lot of discussion and a lot of discussion also by the members of the committee, not only the presenters, because it is something new and it is something obviously that we are not accustomed to. Therapeutic facility obviously is a new term. And I remember when we were meeting with the drafters from the Chief Parliamentary Council, we meaning the Ministry of Health and Wellness, there was a section that dealt with dispensaries. And we had issues with that, because obviously that collided with dispensaries as articulated in the Health Act. So the decision was taken, let us sit down and discuss this to see exactly what the intent is. And having heard the nature of the intent, it was felt that a term such as therapeutic facility would perhaps best indicate exactly what is intended here and would be a better fit. And basically, we have to look at this in a holistic manner. When I spoke earlier to the church and the pipe organ and bands and so forth, which is the present day thing, and how the younger generation find it easy, for example, to be able to dance in church, dance like David danced, according to the Bible. Older persons would tend to remain stiff because, including some in this honorable chamber, because that is not the culture. That was not how they were brought up. So that we are accustomed to a doctor's office being a table, a desk, a chair, and a sterile kind of environment. That is what we are accustomed to. And so we have this fixation in our mind that that is what it probably will always be. But I remember as a boy, the members of the, what do you call them, the undertakers, was it? Funeral directors they call them, not even undertakers. And you know that grave diggers years ago, no, soil technicians today. Not grave diggers, soil technicians, if you please. Specialists. But back then, we had this picture of what it was. In fact, it was terrifying, I would say, to even go into one of those institutions, one of those places. But everything now has been made, there's a softness, a more embracing and encompassing atmosphere, engaging atmosphere even, in those places. And so this is exactly what this therapeutic facility is all about. It's just a matter of changing the way things are and embracing not only prescriptions as currently obtained. What do I mean by that? I said earlier there was a lawyer who made a strong case, and his point was that of all of the drugs on the market, none of the drugs work better for patients requiring palliative care at the end of life. Patients requiring palliative care. Patients on rehabilitation. And so there are some who argue, including doctors, some doctors, that this is the way that they prefer to go. In fact, one doctor indicated that her office is no longer the sterile type, and that even in terms of intravenous use vitamins, multivitamins, being able to give multivitamins intravenously is part and parcel of that setup. We are embarking, and the government has made it quite clear that our aim in Barbados in terms of health is to make Barbados the hub for medical education, medical tourism, and to establish centers of excellence in this country. And we have a competitive advantage in one or two areas, believe it or not. The Sun and Sea is just not only for tourism purposes. If we create the right kind of facilities, including facilities for elderly Barbadians or elderly patients, elderly persons, Barbados can become a hub for persons who just want to come and spend their last days in a quiet environment, a relatively peaceful environment, the right type of climate, therapeutic, everything. That is the experience that we need to be able to create. And I'll tell you this, there are some studies that are being conducted, I think in Israel, involving medicinal cannabis with older patients. gerontology, twinning the two, because it is felt, not yet proven, that there are some significant benefits to be derived from persons with dementia. And this is happening at universities in Israel as we speak. So that Barbados, with an aging population, and it is going to continue for a while, we can establish Barbados as a place where elderly visitors, elderly patients recuperating, elderly persons requiring palliative care could come and enjoy the remainder of their lives. And I believe that a therapeutic facility would do exactly that. But not only palliative care, Barbados is badly in need of a rehabilitation center. We do not have the capacity to deal with rehabilitation in this country. Persons recovering from strokes, persons with all kind of that are not mobile at the moment and need to, they need to get therapy. But the facilities at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and certainly within the government institutions are inadequate and grossly inadequate. And so sometimes we tend to hospitalize persons who would better be served in a rehabilitation facility. So that we have to start thinking outside of the box, understanding, one, that the world is changing, understanding that demographics are changing even in our country, understanding that we are part of a sub-region called CARICOM and that we have close ties with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and that Barbados once used to be the hub for the Eastern Caribbean in terms of medical services, and we need to return to that, but in an expanded way. And that is one of the ways that we can do so in terms of the establishment of therapeutic facilities that would facilitate the use of some medicinal marijuana products. The question of visitor, which I raised earlier, that was presented by some of the presenters. The committee believes that as long as a visitor can establish that he or she is legitimately in possession of medicinal cannabis, that visitor should be treated in the same way as a person who received a prescription under our legislation. That was the feeling of the committee in relation to visitors. And young persons, we had the issue, young persons and minors, but the argument was made in relation to young person and the age of consent and so on, and it was determined that we would remove the concept, of young persons will be removed from the bill, but the concept of minors will remain. In clause 3(2), the establishment of the authority, the words subject to section 17, the committee agreed should be deleted, as was suggested by one of the presenters. Clause 5(1), the establishment of a board to manage the authority. The drafters were urged to make a change to clause 5(1). Instead of saying they should establish a board of directors, it should say there's a board of directors appointed by the minister. And this section, there was a lot of discussion, and even among committee members, in terms of the board, the authority, and so on. But what is intended here is nothing new. This is how all of our boards operate. And when you look at the establishment or the regulatory framework for medicinal cannabis in several jurisdictions, there's no difference from what we are attempting to do here. The major difference, perhaps some jurisdictions, Israel being one, medicinal cannabis remains with the Ministry of Health, but there are others that it is placed under the responsibility of another ministry. And we are convinced and satisfied that ours should remain with the Ministry of Agriculture, and that the board and all of those other components of that regulatory framework will remain and should remain, except for the change, the minor change that I alluded to earlier. Clause 25.3, which deals with the person who uses or consumes medicinal cannabis. The committee agreed to remove reference to authorized persons, but a reference should be made to interns and graduate pharmacists, as was recommended and articulated by the Pharmaceutical Council and the Pharmaceutical Society. Clause 28, dealing with caregivers. This particular clause in the bill, before any changes were made to it, kind of ruled out persons who had convictions as far as being caregivers is concerned, and that was removed because we felt that it was a bit hard and that we needed to soften that part of the bill. There was also some issues in relation to clause 32, which was the duration of licenses, the eligibility to apply, and the committee agreed that those increases, the license period should increase from 3 to 5 years. And those were the ones, the issues that I felt that I should raise at this point in time. I can assure this honourable chamber and all Barbadians that the amendments, the new bill, or the amendments to the bill, I should say, as reflected by the report of the Joint Select Committee, is far better than the one that we would have introduced in here, and that is thanks. That is as a result of the collaboration with all of the persons that we were able to engage. And that is why we are very, very thankful. And I would urge all of those persons who engaged and those persons who simply attended or who followed online to remain with this bill and remain with the development of this industry. Because it's not an industry that is designed for any particular segment or sector of this society. It's not something that we want to come in here and say, yes, take off the box. We said we'll do it, we've done it. No, no, no. This is an industry that can assist in the development of this country and to be able to deal with the road situations that we have, the water, which is a huge problem, to be able to do better even with the sewage situation going forward. This is an economic driver. But it is important that we do it right and that we do not allow in any way for there to be any spin-offs, negatively so, in terms of the wider population, and that the industry is properly regulated. And also, I want to state here, even in terms of the drug formulary, I said earlier that we had introduced 5. That's not the end. This is an evolving situation. Research is very much restricted because it is still an illegal drug. In the United States, it's still a Schedule I drug. And so there's limited research. Therefore, in terms of trying to reach evidence-based solutions, you are limited. But the wider the research gets, the longer it takes, the more people, the more countries, the more scientists that are involved in the research process, I am absolutely sure that other compounds will be added to that formulary that will be based on the appropriate level of evidence. And so, in closing, I want to say again on behalf of the chair of the committee and the members of the Joint Select Committee, thank you sincerely to all persons and to all groups who contributed to this process. We have a better bill. We have a better idea as to where we need to be going. We could not have done that without the participation, without the criticisms, without the suggestions and recommendations, and may it continue to be so. And I also would like to say to the drafters of the bill, and it was a lot of work. The regulations will follow, that is even more work. But I am satisfied having interacted with those persons. I am satisfied having spoken to members of the committee. I am satisfied having dealt with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, that the regulations which will accompany this bill will clearly define the roles of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Food Security and the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and that all those matters that fall within the ambit of the Ministry of Health and Wellness in terms of regulations, in terms of training, that those things will remain, and that we will continue with the level of pharmacovigilance that the Barbados Drug Service is known for, and that this drug, like any new drug on the market, will always have some people who will have some difficulties with it. But we have a legacy. We have the experience in this country through the Barbados Drug Service and the Barbados Drug Formulary Committee of introducing new drugs on the market in Barbados and to ensuring that these drugs do exactly meet the specifications and do exactly what they're supposed to do. So that level of safety and security remains, and we have that experience. We don't have to import it. We have it, and we will use it. And so with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I beg that this report be adopted.
Honourable Member for St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to give full support to this report and to the bill accompanying it, the Medical Cannabis Industry Bill. Sir, this is another fulfillment legislatively of a manifesto promise of the Barbados Labour Party. As my colleague, the Honourable Member for Bridgetown, said, the Barbados Labour Party has reputationally has always fulfilled 90% of our manifesto promises from way down from the time you had manifestos, sir. This is another aspect. I am especially happy, sir, to be able to participate in this debate because, after all, one of the main beneficiaries of this legislation would be people with disabilities, old people, sir, who have suffered tremendously through the period of time because of the criminalization of substance abuse in all forms. People, sir, with glaucoma, with multiple sclerosis, with asthma, with epilepsy, with seizures, attacks, all of these sleep disorders, cancer, sir, all of these are people who will benefit from the legalization of medicinal marijuana under certain circumstances, sir. The heads of government, of course, in 2014 March, at a conference in St. Vincent, would have established a commission to examine the issues of possible reform to the legal regime relating to cannabis and medical and marijuana use. And of course, that commission, headed by Professor Antoine, sir, who was a contemporary of mine, in fact, at Cave Hill Law School in the late 70s, early 80s, would have issued a report the following year, and they, in fact, noted that probably the most poignant aspect of all the sessions that they held across the Caribbean, town hall meetings involving the public and getting the public's view, was a session held in Barbados where wheelchair-bound persons, people with mobility issues, mainly women, mainly female, spoke eloquently on the issue in support of what we are doing today, sir. I know most, if not all, of those women mentioned in the report. On that occasion, I've sat on committees on them as a member of the Council of the Disabled. I've sat on the monitoring committee that would have been established the last time the Barbados Labour Party was in office under the Right Honourable former Prime Minister Oinafa. My colleague, our colleague, the Honourable Minister of the Environment, Member of Parliament, St. Michael East, at one time was Minister in charge of that area when he was Minister of Social Transformation, sir. And it is this kind of debate that makes it worthwhile for me to be in the Parliament of Barbados, to be able to be part of what's going on today, that people with disabilities will not have to be medical refugees going to Canada or America now to get medication that is their human right, sir. Or they would not have to illegally use it, sir. Or would not have to call on the chief medical officer, as the chief medical officer today has the legal authority to still issue licenses for use of medicinal marijuana. But we know, sir, that because of the bureaucracy that we are wrapped up in this country, that the chief medical officer has really used that legislative authority, and when they used it, sometimes too late, sir. We heard about a case before us in the Joint Select Committee on that issue. One of the presenters, sir, whose wife died, sir, the permission came too late. They had a cancer. So this, sir, is what we, all 29 of us, sir, all 30 of us, sir, who ran under the Barbados Labour Party ticket, sir, and all who won massively, have been called to do good by the people of this country, sir. And I look forward to hearing the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. When he speaks, sir, he spoke on the last occasion how his signature went on a black piece of paper, sir, and seemed to be implying that it somehow ended up on a manifesto, sir. But we sat 6 whole meetings, sir. 6 whole meetings, at least I remember, held between the office here, leader of the opposition office, and the last one at the Barbados Labour Party headquarters, Grantley Adams, sir, the Right Excellent headquarters. 4 o'clock a morning, sir, we left there. 4 o'clock a morning, sir, under the chairmanship of the Honourable Prime Minister. I was so tired and hungry, sir. I said, let me pass Baxter's Road and see if I could get some food. Baxter's Road closed down. That is how long we spent there, sir. Going through every single thing in this manifesto, sir. Every single thing was so that is what our signature, including that of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, was affixed to, sir. And of course, as part of that manifesto, we have in there that the Barbados Labour Party, well, significant strides have been made in the use of marijuana in pain management and for the treatment of a range of medical complaints. The Barbados Labour Party will not deny Barbadians access to modern treatment modalities, and the Barbados Labour Party will legalize the use of medical marijuana, sir. And of course, the Leader of the Opposition agreed to that last year. First time, sir, in the history of this Barbados, sir, and a tribute to this party, the Barbados Labour Party, the oldest political party in the English-speaking Caribbean, sir. First time that all the candidates had the opportunity to input into every single policy directive and initiative in this manifesto. So never before in either of the two established parties in Barbados has that happened, sir, that each and every candidate, now MP, was involved in the formulation of a manifesto, sir, and could plead ownership to it. Before that, sir, you would come and as a candidate, you would know on the night, in most cases, when the manifesto launched to the public like everybody else. So, sir, this is an issue that not only relates, as I said, to medicine, sir, and ganja, sir. It's an issue that relates to social justice. It's an issue that relates to human rights. It's an issue that relates to economics, sir. Yes, there's a monetary aspect to it, sir, and we are under pressure, sir. After 10 lost years under the last government, sir, we have to find new industries in development, sir, where there's energy, where there's use the innovative means and digitalization, the cultural aspects, sir, the blue economy that we're building out. This is a new industry, sir. The Barbados Labour Party traditionally has been the party creating new industries, whether it was the financial services and the offshore banking act in the late 70s, the cultural industry, sir. This is the party that leads that initiative, and we're doing it again. And within the context of regional hegemony, sir, because you had, as I said, a CARICOM commission on the issue, and other CARICOM countries, some have gone ahead of us, sir. Jamaica in 2015, decriminalizing the use of, or rather legalizing, in fact, the use of ganja, marijuana, for personal use, sir, an amount of quantities for use. St. Vincent following, sir, and St. Vincent, both Jamaica and St. Vincent passing legislation in terms of the sacramental use for Rastas, sir. And Barbados, sir, the cabinet has agreed that we will take that step, sir, because Rasta is a religion recognized since I think 1994 in a case in Jamaica, Francis, confirmed, sir, by the OECS in May. Professor Ventosa, Mr. Justice, confirming that a few months ago, and saying that Rasta has a constitutional right under the Petition Constitution for sacramental use of marijuana, sir. It is a human right, freedom of religion. Barbados, a similar right. And the Cabinet has agreed for that because these are human rights, sir, that we are involved in, constitutional rights. The World Drug Report in 2017 noted that an estimated 183 million people globally use cannabis, marijuana, and the most extensively use it, sir, as a drug, and statistics, sir, for medication, sir, and statistics, in fact, public opinion in Barbados is now being shown at 63%, at least when last a poll was done. In 2017, 2 years ago, that 63% of Barbadians desire law reform in this area. And that has grown tremendously from how it would have been 10 years ago when it would still have been a minority. And even in our conservative society, sir, that in often cases resist change, the majority of people, almost 2/3, 2 years ago, recognized that we have to reform the law in this area. It cannot be, sir, that poor people continue to go to jail for use of small quantities of marijuana, cannabis for their personal use, sir. Rich people get away. That is the reality, not only in Barbados, but in all over the world. America, sir, we know that historically, within the last 50 years, 1 in 4 or 5 black men in jail, sir, a lot because of possession of drugs, sir. So the law is discriminatory, sir. And I say that, sir, from the perspective of an individual who has never even smoked a cigarette in the life. Far less use cannabis, marijuana, sir. That's not my vice, sir. I, like every human being, have vice, sir, but not that one. So I could stand here, sir, and speak from a totally objective view on this issue because I have no personal interest in this, sir. But I recognize, sir, that we have to change. We have to reform. We have to go, sir. We cannot be left behind. And I know that there's a concern by some about mental health issues and psychosis, sir. But I have to go with the science, sir. I'm not a scientist. Never was, sir. But I have to go with the science, and the evidence is there. The evidence would have been curtailed and hindered over the last century in a large part, sir, because it is clear from the readings I have done that, marijuana use for the vast majority of history was legal. From way back as 400 AD, people used to use cannabis sativa for medical purposes, sir. And it had proven medical benefits in several areas that outweigh the risks. But then we know, sir, what happened 100 years ago in the United States of America when alcohol, the prohibition came off, sir. And, it was felt that marijuana and ganja now would compete with alcohol, sir, and you know how it is, sir, in the big countries, lobbyists and those with interest, therefore, in making millions and millions of dollars in alcohol, which is what happens, sir, alcoholic sales, moved together and came together, and suddenly cannabis and marijuana use now criminalized, starting in 1919, I think it was, in Jamaica, sir, and moving into the 1930s through the rest of the colonial West Indies, including Barbados, suddenly is illegal without any real scientific evidence to show the harmful effects, sir, when in most cases the evidence is that alcohol is a more dangerous substance abuse in excess than is marijuana, sir. But as how, sir, the global order, sir, the international order deems itself, sir. And then in 1961, treaty passed at United Nations, whereby most of the world come together and say that cannabis and marijuana, ganja, illegal, sir. And the scientific research intentionally curtailed into the issue. I think the Germans, a German, sir, was one of the main people moving towards, calling on the criminalization of these drugs. Some research carried out on some Germans, sir, that was clearly defective and a fake. But, sir, we know have to act within the interests of Barbados and our people and of the people in the wider Caribbean, and therefore I give commendations to the CARICOM Commission, of which I mentioned, which spoke on this issue, produced a report, sir, and we are moving ahead, sir, to do good by our people. The Western campaign on war on drugs has failed, sir. That is accepted. The war on drugs has failed. I mean, it hasn't stopped it, sir. I mean, when you decriminalize it, sir, and take the aura out of it and the financial benefits, sir, it's going to be better than this war on drugs that they had in the 60s and 70s and 80s, sir, spearheaded by the United States, that even the United States now accepts has been a failure. The legalization of ganja, sir, for medicinal purpose would in fact allow for more control of it over the risk factors associated with cannabis-related harm than is the current ineffective prohibition and laws that are on our statute books. Laws, sir, that as they stand now, heighten health risks and induce social harm, sir. And, sir, I wish to draw a comparison, if you may allow me, sir, to the legalization of abortion, sir, in the early 1980s, again brought about by this party when in government, sir, the Honourable, and I could mention, I haven't asked permission, but I mention him positively, of course, sir, Dame Billy Miller, Health Minister, predecessor to my colleague who led this debate as Member of Parliament for the city of Bridgetown, piloting that bill in these chambers in the early 80s, sir, and there would have been furor against it, sir. I mean, something that is fundamental to the rights of women, sir, and as far as I'm concerned, personal and private. I mean, if a woman within her body, sir, wants to abort within the context of health or mental risk, sir, or incest or whatever, sir, and absolutely no reason why the state has to get involved in that, sir. So abortion was legalized. One of the first countries, sir, in this part of the world, sir, to do that. The United States, sir, did it, of course, by case law in the mid-1970s, Roe versus Wade, and even now, the policymakers and legislators fighting up now about the issue, and people want to reverse it, sir. But that's fundamental to the rights. It's a human right. And this is comparable to that, sir, because people's lives are at stake, can be at stake in terms of the pain they're suffering and their health. We have a duty to those people today, sir, in what we are doing. This Parliament did the best thing, sir, sent the bill before a joint select committee, as my colleague, Member of Parliament, Bridgetown, stated, sir. We had, I believe, five sessions, everybody given the opportunity to come before the Joint Select Committee and present oral evidence, or oral submissions, sorry, also invitations, and people wrote in as well, sir, people with interest, Council for the Disabled, people with disabilities given the opportunity, Pharmaceutical Council, Medical Council, the Rasta community, sir, the Bar Association. So wide consultation on this, and sir, the bill, as my colleague said and spoke about, is different in some measure to what was initially laid in this Parliament because of those consultations, sir. This is a democratic government involving the people, and that is what we pledged to do, and that is what we're doing, sir, not like the last government. And I'm fully in support, as I sat on those meetings and heard people being given the opportunity to come, sir. And We've brought it out of the Joint Select Committee as quickly as possible, sir. Immediately after Parliament resumes, essentially, we're back in here debating the issue. Sir, of course, I am Minister with responsibility as Home Affairs Minister for the National Council of Substance Abuse. And the Commission, sir, supports the use of medical marijuana, strictly regulated by government. The National Council for Substance Abuse also made a written submission to the Joint Select Committee, sir, supporting what we're doing today, but call for strict regulation, which is what we're doing within the bill, sir, underpinned by a properly executed public education campaign, and that is important, sir. And the council, sir, would ensure that that is done not only for medical marijuana, but in terms of use and abuse of illegal substance abuse, period. The National Council also calls for appropriately developed, the public education campaign to be appropriately developed for a wide cross-section of audiences, buttressed by training primary health and care providers. And the National Council for Substance Abuse, of course, has its policy campaigns within the schools, primary and secondary schools, because we have to still protect the youth of this country, and that is what we will be doing, sir. You would see in the bill, for example, section 25, I think it is, that 25(2), that the parent or guardian of a patient who is a minor shall obtain a certificate in writing from a medical practitioner certifying that the use of medicinal cannabis is necessary in the case of the minor, and the parent or guardian shall consent in writing to the use of the medicinal cannabis. In other words, clearly the parent is involved in the use of their minor child with, let's say, some multiple sclerosis, and so there are those regulations. And what we're doing today, sir, is not for the youth to feel that they could go now and smoke this herb all about the place, sir. We're not in that at all, sir. We're dealing with medicinal marijuana, sir. There will be the opportunity, as we have said in our manifesto, and as the Honourable Prime Minister has said on many occasions, for Barbadians to be directly involved in whether recreational use marijuana should be legalized, sir. That time will come, the people will be involved, everyone in Barbados, every voter will have the opportunity, sir. But we're dealing now with medicinal, and we don't want people to get tied up or confused, because the youth have to be protected. We will ensure that they are protected, sir. All of us, sir, look, sir, this is reality. All of us, sir, have constituents. We go on blocks, sir. We're politicians, sir. We go on blocks in communities, people smoking this thing, sir. And I am as I said, I've never used it, sir, but I'm no prude. And therefore, sir, all I do when I go, sir, I tell the men, look, man, and if the whole in the youth, 1 year old, I say, but you know, man, you shouldn't be smoking this thing, man, holding your youth, man. And they respect my view, sir, and they understand it, sir. And so this is not a case, sir, and I take serious umbrage, sir, to what the Honourable Leader of the Opposition sought to imply in here a couple of weeks ago about drug laws and politicians, sir. I could speak with authority, sir, and I don't hold myself out to regular fathers, only myself, but I could speak with authority, sir. None of the 29 of us on this side of this bench involved with any drug laws, sir. And I don't know where that came from. I quite frankly thought he meant, as we know, sir, the last government, sir. But none of us, sir, and in a case...
Honourable member for the point of order, sir.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member out of St. James North is misleading the House, and seriously so. The records of this Parliament will not show that this gentleman on his feet accused any of the 29 members on the other side of being linked to drug lords in Barbados. If the honourable member wants to discuss that issue further, we can do that. But I know on the occasion when last I spoke of this, neither by insinuation, implication, or inference taken by anybody else except the honourable member himself, I presume, did I suggest that any of the 29 members on the other side were linked to drug people in Barbados. That was never my focus, but if you want to discuss that, we can.
Continue, Honourable Member.
Sir, I am eternally grateful that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition has taken the opportunity to clear that up, because how that went out in the public, sir, had me extremely concerned. So I am grateful to the Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman is misleading the House. I do not understand what is the measure he uses to ascertain how that went out to the public. And if he wants the record to stand absolutely clear, and if it is in order, Mr. Speaker, we can ask for the transcript.
Honourable Member for St. James North, continue, please.
Sir, the Honourable Leader has clarified he didn't mean the 29 of us in here, in fact the 30, sir, because we all run together. And I'm satisfied about that, sir. I don't want any record.
Mr. Speaker, again, the honourable member is misleading the House. I never said what I did or did not mean. I said what I did not say. And that has to be absolutely clear. But if you want to persist with the discussion, we can. Because
I don't think that resolution is before this Honourable Chamber, Honourable Member, in relation to the discussion upon that. Continue, Honourable Member for St. James North.
Mr. Speaker, I hope I get back my 10 minutes, sir, respectively, sir. This government, sir, and again, as part of the, my mandate ministerially as for the National Council of Substance Abuse, is committed to improving the efficacy of the drug treatment courts, sir, established about 4 or 5 years ago, whereby the magistrates have the authority to refer persons, especially first-time offenders, for who have been in possession of, quantities of cannabis, marijuana for personal use, to the drug treatment court, sir, and a regime being set out for them, protocols to try to get treatment and rehabilitate them, sir. And this is what we have to do. We can't be sending young men, primarily first-time offenders, to Dodge for personal use, sir. We have to look at social justice reform, sir. That is what we are looking at present. Both the Honourable Attorney General and myself, sir, and we look forward next year to bring in reform in this area as well, sir, as we have been doing on all fronts, to the good of our people. As I said, sir, we support the view of the CARICOM Commission that smoking of cannabis, marijuana in public places, ought to continue to be prohibited. We know, sir, that the naysayers, the Conservatives, would plead, sir, obstacles and say, why are we doing this? And, you're going to have problems with correspondent banking, the banking community, the Bankers Association in their written submission to the Joint Select Committee would have referred to that issue. And we know, sir, we are a government that is cognizant of what is going on internationally, sir, and the issue of whether, you know, there may be some banks that will say that this is the fruits of illegal activity because it may be illegal in some other country, sir. The fact of the matter is, yes, whether we like it or not, we are under a system, banking system at present, a financial system where three or four of the major banks in Barbados are Canadian banks, sir. Canada was one of the first countries to legalize medicinal marijuana, and in fact has gone the full steps last year, legalizing cannabis use, period, for recreational use. Wasn't the first country to have done that. Southern Africa has done it, sir. And you know, Southern Africa, sir, is a model in terms of advancement of human and constitutional rights, because historically, of course, because of apartheid and the denial of basic human rights to black people, sir. One of the greatest men of the 20th century, Nelson Mandela, first president, would have moved towards giving human and constitutional rights on many areas that we are still, or some areas that we are still lagging behind as a country, sir. Uruguay, I was in Uruguay recently, 2015, would have legalized it as well for recreational use. So, sir, this is the proper thing to do. We will sort out the issue with the banks. As I said, we have the situation where the main banks here, most of the main banks are Canadian anyway, so this issue has been confronted in their home-based country, sir. We know in terms of insurance as well, health insurance, there may be initial issues as well, whether, but we call, sir, once we legalize this for the insurance companies to be able to give health insurance for the drugs that will be used under prescription and under regulation, sir, because as Section 25(1) says, a person shall only use or consume medicinal cannabis where it has been prescribed by a medical doctor, sir, practitioner. So it isn't that any and everybody could go out there and because you're sick, sir, you have asthma or epilepsy, just go and get it. So it's highly regulated, sir. Sir, as the bill shows, we have the issue as well has come up as to whether Barbadians will be able to partake in the in this whole venture, because we do not have the money, sir. The Barbadians are not restricted in any aspect of the development of this industry, sir. None whatsoever. Practically, sir, yes, and again, sir, you know me, I'm straight and I talk straight. There may be issues in terms of the research and development that may require people with some finance to get into, sir. But the truth is, sir, the reality and the facts are that the University of the West Indies was ahead of the game in the 1970s, sir. The University of the West Indies was into research in this area, sir. But then, of course, when the cap came down and the war on drugs, it had to push back. The University of the West Indies was among the first globally to research marijuana for medicinal purposes and to formulate a medicinal product for glaucoma, sir, in 1978.
The honourable member has 2 more minutes.
Thank you, sir.
I gave you back your time.
You gave me back my time, sir. Thank you. So, sir, the University of the West Indies, of course, is part of this society, sir. So, we envisage a situation where Barbadians, sir, where Caribbean people will be able to participate in this whole new economy, sir, for the good of the people, sir, serving two purposes, sir. You know, the Rastas, sir, said they regard the plant as gifted by God as natural free substance for healing. And quite frankly, sir, they use Genesis chapter 9, verse 3, in support. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb, I have given you all things, sir. The biblical source for what we are doing, sir. And we call on all right-thinking Barbadians to support this, sir. I wish to conclude, though, by expressing my disappointment in the Democratic Labour Party, sir. Quite frankly, sir, sometimes I wonder, really, whether to give them credence, sir. But historically, sir, you still have to respect the party, even though there might be just a lobby group now. Because headline, 30th of September, a Monday of one of our daily newspapers, sir, Dems against marijuana bill, sir. Democratic Labour Party says it cannot support the medical cannabis industry bill in its current form, sir. And I was shocked, sir. There's some things that have to go beyond party, political opportunities, sir. Because the same person who now leads the Democratic Labour Party, sir, when she was a senator, was in support of this whole regime, sir, said so publicly, sir. But apparently is now hijacked by the conservative elements of that party, sir. You know, and trying to use this now to divide the people of Barbados on a ground where there should be no division, sir. Because this is for the good of the people. We dealing with medicinal marijuana, sir. If when we come now to recreational, and we agree, sir, that on recreational, there will be some on our side who would agree, there will be some on our side that won't. Some on the other side would agree, some won't. And so we agree that, but on this, sir, there should be no political divisions. And I must say I was disappointed. Because it tells me that that party, lobby group as it is, has been hijacked, sir, by people who realize that they've been completely rejected, massively rejected, booted out of office by the people of Barbados unanimously, sir, and now looking for some cause. But you have to pick causes that are good and not causes that are against the advancement, health, economic, constitutional, human rights, social justice of the people of Barbados, sir. And sir, I am in full support of this bill, and thank you, sir, for the opportunity to speak in on behalf of the government of Barbados, the people of St. James North, and last but not least, sir, people with disabilities who I have supported their cause for all my adult life, sir. I thank you, sir. I'm obliged.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the sitting be suspended until 1:45 p.m.
The question is that this Honourable Chairman will be suspended until 1:45? Until 1:45 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands suspended until 1:45 p.m.